Hello, I'm Amy Zabi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, July 10. The WHO? Oh, do you mean the UN? We all know that I've reported on in the past how biased the United Nations is against the State of Israel, where there are various member states who routinely oppress their own populations or portions of their own populations, but then turn and debate at length perceived ills that the only democracy in the Middle East seems to be at the core of. Commendations for conditions that Israel has not propagated or even worked tirelessly and selflessly to prevent, all while trying to defend itself from hostile neighbors and global groups that want it annihilated from the map. And yet the UN just continually pounds Israel for so-called ills with these condemnations. Well, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, despite a world of educated and progressive and freedom-loving, truth-loving people, and engagement of an internet that has information for all to consume for free, well, these people are neither enlightened or progressive, because the anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is still existing and is as institutionalized as ever. And what do I mean by that? Well, now the World Health Organization, the WHO, the WHO, is towing the same line as the UN. Perhaps the WHO is now comprised of all those students in the last 10 plus years who have fell victim to the BDS activism on college campuses and fell victim to the brainwashing and hate speech disguised as human rights activism on Western college campuses. Now, let us keep in mind that Israel is a birthplace of various medical innovations, treatments, and medical devices that the entire civilized world is exercising and enjoying a higher quality of life. Keep in mind that at its own expense and peril, Israel aids Syrians at its northern border. Keep in mind it has always aided various people from neighboring nations who flee from the violence of the terrorists and the Israel-hating contingents that are beside her. Keep in mind, over the past few decades, it was Israel to which the Darfur refugees can find solace, help, and even a plan to restart their lives. After the quake in Haiti, the tsunami in Indonesia, and even in terror events such as the one in Orlando, it was Israel who had sent first responders within the first 24 hours, including medical personnel, counselors, and help in any way. But now Israel is being condemned by the WHO for the healthcare conditions of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. But who is the leadership in the West Bank and Gaza Strip? Israel is one of 190-some member nations of the WHO, and they fall into the European contingent. Gaza and West Bank are part of the WHO's Eastern Mediterranean region. There are 6 regions in total, and that includes the Americas, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Western Pacific. Now, the Eastern Mediterranean region is made up of 2 member states. Most of them are Arab and Muslim, includes Iraq, Syria, Iran, Jordan, Egypt, and Lebanon. The only non-state included is indeed the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The Eastern Mediterranean sector has a new, since June 2018, leader named Dr. Ahmed Al-Mandouri, and he is from Oman. Their head office is in Cairo, and they have satellite offices in Ramallah and Gaza. Now, they are increasingly on their Eastern Mediterranean portion of the WHO website becoming far more political in their rhetoric and less medically centered in their assessments and problem solving, or at least problem identifying. For instance, it will only refer to the various territories as the occupied territories, and until recently never laid any blame on any condition on the leadership of the Gaza, which is Hamas, a terrorist organization, and the PA, Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. They only recently noted on their website that these leaderships can play a role, but the core of everything wrong in the healthcare delivery processes for the people in Gaza and in the West Bank are at the fault of the Israelis. They are blaming it on the Israeli permitting processes and the security measures that are responsible for these ills that the Gazans and the PA residents face. But you can see this whole report online if you go to the WHO and look at the Eastern Mediterranean sector. You'll see that it completely ignores and never mentions any of the realities or the particulars in that region ongoing or the motivations of the stakeholders. What's missing from these reports on the Palestinian healthcare is the context that, first of all, Israel completely withdrew from the Gaza, and the takeover and the leadership is solely at the hands of Hamas. So anything wrong, we need to start there. There's no discussion about the effect of Palestinian terrorism, which actually impacts the delivery of healthcare. Nor is there any mention about the leadership's reaction. The PA runs the West Bank. Like I said, Hamas runs the Gaza, and they have clearly an impact on whether or not Israel can deliver healthcare services to the people in those areas. But since they're not the leadership, I don't. Who's responsible for what? I'm still confused, or who they think should be is still confusing. There's nothing about the subverting of medical ambulances by terrorists, nothing that mentions Hamas's rejection of Israel's attempt to supply a huge amounts of medical supplies, and there's no mention that the halting of medical shipments by the PA also occurred. WHO's refusal to address the complexities of the situation and all the factors that disrupt optimal health care for Palestinians is indeed problematic and reveals to the lack of credibility of that sector or the report. Not only that, you need to know that I've been reporting for over 6 years now that the various treatments that Palestinians receive in Israeli hospitals, usually free of charge. And to top that all off, the Eastern Mediterranean sector of the WHO relies only on information provided to them by the PA or the Gazan governments. So I'm sure that information is 100% accurate and there's not a hint of bias in any of it. Remember, Hamas is notoriously corrupt and subverting lots of humanitarian aid, and including things like concrete for the people to build houses and schools, to build terror tunnels instead. And they clearly in their charter want Israel blown off the face of the map. So I don't know why I would take their health ministry, Hamas's health ministry report, with any sense that it is credible at all. Seems almost like an oxymoron. To get more information about this topic, you can visit the WHO, World Health Organization website, and go to their Eastern Mediterranean sector, and you can see their posts of these reports that are completely ridiculous and rely on inaccurate and incomplete and even lying information supplied by Hamas and the PA to the organization. You'll see the biased rhetoric in the reporting, and you will also see videos posted that are now recycling age-old stereotypes about Jews. You can also go to cameraoncampus.org or go to Facebook and search Camera on Campus, and you can see full links to articles about these topics. The WHO is not a news organization, and yet they constantly post articles about what is then proved to be debunked or incorrect or inaccurate reports about Palestinians who are killed or injured at the hands of the IDF. And they rarely post a retraction. It is really being politicized, and it seems to me they are having conferences with the UN on this regard. They are comparing notes and sharing agenda items, all at the expense of truth, peace, and ultimately the Palestinian people. Everybody, please be out there looking for the truth, because we cannot solve problems unless we have accurate information on what the problem is and who's at the core of it. Shavua Tov, and have a great week.